In a world obsessed with visible wealth, Dr. Maya Chen discovered something that would shatter everything she thought she knew about millionaires. It started with data, as most mysteries in her life did, but it would end with a revelation that challenged the very foundation of how wealth actually works. Maya had spent 3 years analyzing financial patterns across America, tracking the invisible habits of self-made millionaires for a major investment firm. The research was clear and consistent. They saved aggressively, invested wisely, lived below their means, and avoided the trap of appearing wealthy. They were the millionaires next door that everyone talked about but rarely noticed. Her findings were about to be published, another study confirming what financial experts already believed, when she noticed something strange in the data from a small Midwestern town called Millbrook. The numbers didn't make sense. Millbrook had 17 documented millionaires in a population of just 4,000 people. That ratio alone was extraordinary. But what caught Maya's attention was how they made their money. Traditional investments were there, modest stock portfolios and retirement accounts, but those couldn't explain the acceleration in their wealth over the past decade. Something else was happening, something her algorithms couldn't quite capture. Maya convinced her firm to let her spend 2 months in Millbrook, presenting herself as a researcher studying small-town economics. She rented a small apartment above the hardware store and began her observation. The millionaires were exactly what her research predicted. Quiet, unassuming, driving older cars and shopping at the same grocery store as everyone else. Tom Hendricks owned the local pharmacy. Jennifer Wu ran a small accounting practice. Robert Mills had retired from teaching high school physics. On the surface, they were ordinary. But Maya had learned to look deeper than surfaces. She noticed they met regularly at a coffee shop every Thursday morning. Not all of them, but 6 or 7 would gather, sometimes more. They talked about normal things, weather and local events, but occasionally Maya caught fragments of conversation that didn't fit. Patents, prototypes, failed ventures in distant cities. They spoke in a kind of code, casual references that meant nothing to outsiders but clearly carried weight among themselves. It took Maya 3 weeks to earn enough trust to be invited to one of their meetings. What she discovered stunned her. These millionaires weren't following traditional investment strategies at all. They were investing in what they called micro-innovations, specialized technological advances so niche and obscure that mainstream investors dismissed them as worthless. A patent for a specific coating process that improved solar panel efficiency by 2%. A failing startup developing sensors for agricultural drones that nobody wanted yet. Forgotten software from the 90s that could be repurposed for modern applications. Each millionaire had their specialty, their area of deep expertise, and they invested only in innovations within that narrow domain. Jennifer Wu, the accountant, invested exclusively in financial technology patents that had failed commercially but contained clever algorithmic approaches. Robert Mills, the retired physics teacher, bought up obscure materials science patents from bankrupt labs. Each person was a specialist, going incredibly deep into one area, finding value where others saw only failure. They shared their findings with each other, creating a collective intelligence that seemed unstoppable. Maya was fascinated. This was the story that would make her career. The millionaires who invested in invisible innovation, who saw value in the dismissed and discarded. She began documenting everything, planning her exposé, when she noticed something that didn't fit the pattern. One name kept appearing in their conversations, always with a mixture of respect and something else, maybe bewilderment. They called him simply Ray. Ray drove a taxi in Millbrook. Maya had seen him around town, a quiet man in his 50s who seemed to know everyone and remember everything. He had driven Maya herself twice, asking thoughtful questions about her research, listening more than talking. The millionaires mentioned him often, but always vaguely. He had invested in some of the same opportunities they had, they said, but his returns were inexplicably higher. Much higher. Maya's curiosity pulled her toward Ray like gravity. She arranged to meet him under the pretense of needing regular rides to interview subjects in neighboring towns. During their conversations, Ray revealed nothing about investing. He talked about his passengers, the stories they told, the connections between seemingly unrelated things. A farmer complaining about irrigation sensors led to a story about a software developer visiting her sister. A retired engineer's hobby project connected to a conversation Ray had overheard about manufacturing problems in another state. He was a generalist in a town of specialists, a connector who saw patterns across domains. One evening, after a particularly long drive, Ray invited Maya to his home. It was modest, exactly what you'd expect from a small-town taxi driver, but his office was different. Maps covered the walls, not geographical maps, but conceptual ones showing relationships between technologies, patents, companies, and people. Ray had been connecting the dots that the specialists couldn't see because they were too focused on their narrow expertise. That agricultural sensor the Millionaires had dismissed as too niche. Ray had connected it to 3 other failing technologies and created a system that major farming corporations were now bidding millions to acquire. The obscure financial algorithm Jennifer had invested in? Ray had seen how it could integrate with forgotten inventory software and a failed logistics platform to revolutionize supply chain management. Ray wasn't just investing in micro-innovations. He was synthesizing them, seeing how specialist knowledge from completely different domains could combine into something revolutionary. While the Millbrook Millionaires were earning solid returns by going deep, Ray was earning exponential returns by going wide. He was the catalyst, the generalist who could see the invisible connections that specialists, by definition, were blind to. The revelation shook Maya's understanding of wealth creation. The millionaires next door were real. Their strategies of patience and discipline were valid, but there was another level she hadn't seen. True innovation wasn't just about specialized knowledge or patient investing. It was about synthesis, about seeing how disparate pieces fit together to create something entirely new. But Ray had asked her not to publish his story. The moment his methods became known, he explained that they would stop working. The value was in seeing what others overlooked, and publicity would bring attention that would eliminate the opportunity. The Millbrook Millionaires knew about Ray but hadn't exposed him either, perhaps understanding that his success didn't diminish theirs, or perhaps recognizing that some knowledge was more valuable when kept quiet. Maya faced a dilemma that went beyond professional ambition. She could write the story of her career, exposing the hidden wealth formula of Millbrook and Ray's genius for synthesis. Her research would be celebrated, her theories validated, her reputation secured. Or she could join the silent revolution, learning from Ray how to see the invisible connections, participating in wealth creation rather than just documenting it. The Millionaires next door had taught the world about patience and discipline. Ray had shown her something deeper, that wealth isn't just about hoarding knowledge or following proven strategies. Sometimes it's about connecting what others keep separate, seeing patterns across boundaries that specialists draw, synthesizing the fragments into something transformative. As Maya sat in her apartment that night, her manuscript complete but unpublished, she realized the real question wasn't whether to expose Ray's methods. It was whether she understood that some knowledge becomes more valuable when shared, while other knowledge becomes worthless the moment it's revealed. The Millionaires next door were hiding in plain sight. Ray was hiding something more profound. The realization that the most disruptive innovations come not from going deeper into specialization, but from connecting what specialists leave fragmented. The choice was hers, and like all truly important decisions, there was no obvious right answer. Only consequences that would ripple forward into a future she couldn't fully predict. The data scientist had found her anomaly, but the anomaly had found her first. And now she had to decide what kind of wealth she really wanted to build.